right, the time being a little bit after 9, to go ahead and bring this meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to thank everybody for attending this meeting. Let's go ahead and do roll call.
Don? Joe?
Here.
Sherry?
Here. I'm sorry.
Gary?
Here.
Dan?
Here. Any of the commissioners have a reason to abstain for a financial or non-financial conflict of interest at this time?
No.
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 No. Just like to point out, one of our fellow commissioners, Don Kettering, is having surgery today, and so let's just take a moment of silence and pray for a speedy recovery for him. So just take a moment here. All right, and what do we got next? Anybody care to make a public comment? Joe, did you want to? Oh, I'm sorry. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Any additions or corrections at this time?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Next item on the agenda, public comment. If it's, we'll give plenty of time for the budget if it's a budget item. So anybody care to make a public comment? All right. Seeing or hearing none, I'll go ahead and close the public comment portion. Next item on the agenda, item number 6, 2020 budget discussion. Guess we'll just open it up. Anybody care to make a comment on our budget? Now would be the time. If you just raise your hand, I'll have it come up and speak for a few minutes. Go ahead, ma'am. Introduce yourself for the record. And with, I'm going to just say, with Don not being here, if there's any part of the budget you don't like, it was Don. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, are you ready?
Go ahead. Yeah,
Okay. I'm Crystal Nelson, Director Curator of the Mead Cultural Education Center, Yankton County Historical Society. I appreciate the opportunity to go first. I have an exhibit that's not finished yet, so I'm eager to get back. The only thing I want to point out, I finally was able to bring you a packet. Had time to put that together so that you guys can see some of the things that we are doing. So I want to point out what's in the packet is some of the current campaigns that we have going on, which is on the right side. And then this larger brochure is our welcome brochure. It has all of our plans for the next, I don't know how long, till we finish. I mean, this is our overall plans for finishing. We give to all of our visitors. And then on the left side is our calendar of events that we did for 2019. 2020 will be very similar. And so the sheet of paper, though, that's on the left side is what I wanted to point out and just go through a couple of things. All we did there, I put our mission at the top of the paper, which basically says that we exist to preserve, protect, interpret, and educate the public about the heritage and development of the city and county of Yankton and Dakota Territory. Our previous year's support from the county, the proposed support is there. And basically what we wanted to point out was that over the last year and a half, we have expanded considerably as far as our operations and what we offer to the community through the Historical Society. We added 3 employees. We expanded our educational space, and that's not counting our storage space. Our educational space went from 5,000 square feet to 30,000 square feet, so we can do a lot more. Our annual budget numbers went from $270,000 to $540,000 because of the additional things that we are doing. We do offer up to 7 internship opportunities for high school and college students, and we've had 3 students take us up on that last year alone. We maintain 35 volunteers that work. We've trained them in care of collections, administrative, events, as well as the meat building project. Those people were all volunteers except for one paid project person that did that work for the Meat Cultural Education Center. We have 3 education kits going into classrooms. We're hoping to triple that by next year. Increase accessibility to the collections. We do have requests, 2 to 3 requests a week that are sometimes international requests. There is a lot more interest going on in what's happened in the Midwest over the last 150 years. So having our collection more available has been very good for us. And we do care for over 45,000 historic objects. 99% of them are related to Yankton County. What we do with the funds that we get from the county, we make programs available for kids of all ages and adults. They also have lots of programs as well. We apply for grants that by showing that we actually get support from the county commission helps us get some of our grants. They want to see that we are supported locally. And that's one way we show our support. And we can also use it for matching. So we can take it and double it, triple it, depending on what the grant allows. And then we also, we're very, very conservative. We take great care in the funds and the donations and the contributions made to the Historical Society. A lot of our staff, we have 8 staff total, and all of them are cross-trained in all different areas. And there are museums that are of our similar size that they have 2 or 3 people hired to do the work of one person in the Historical Society. So, they work very hard to maintain what we do. So my last comment, and then I'll ask if you have questions, is basically that the Yankton County Historical Society and its 35 volunteers, 8 staff, 13 board members have invested a great deal of time, money, and energy into Yankton County with this project. And we just ask that the Yankton County Commission continue to invest in us so that we can fulfill our mission, create a cultural center that we can all be very proud of. Any questions?
As far as the mead goes, I know it's probably a never-ending project, but is there a timeline and dollar figure projected for where you need to be?
So the physical building itself is about 75% complete. So the space that we have left is the east wing and the 3rd floor. The 3rd floor will be done at the end of this year. And then the east wing will start on next year. We have the funds have been donated for the physical rehabilitation of the rest of the space.
Okay. That's
been donated. And so we do have the funds to complete. So now it's just a matter of completing. And we hope to be done by December of 2020 with the building itself. The funds that we're still seeking contributions for is the exhibits. That's not something that's currently 100% funded. Heritage Park, all of our historic buildings that are down at Westside Park all need to get moved out, and we are actively campaigning for that right now. So that's part of the project as well, is to move that out there and to make it a fully interactive park, not only just being able to go through the building and be more interactive with it. We actually are planning living history to be part of it all summer long. So the kids can understand a little bit better and visitors can understand better. And then the other components are related to programming and stuff like that. So we'll continue to expand those. We expect to take about 10 years to finish all of the exhibits. Because we are doing most of it in-house, it's so terribly expensive to have somebody else do our exhibit designing. We have a team of volunteers that meet about 8 hours a week right now, exhibit designing. They have a huge contribution. They spend a lot of time there.
They do a great job. I know when I did the tour of that building, it's just amazing the work that you guys have done, and you've really saved an important piece of the history of really all of South Dakota, but particularly Yankton County. I'd just like to say thank you for that.
Thank you.
The Historic Preservation Fund is about 13,000 budgeted here. What portion do you receive of that? Do you?
We get about 80,000 of it. And we put that strictly into the building,
Goes into
maintenance and into the building, yep.
Does that go into the remodel for that as well? Is that?
Some of it does, some of it does. Long-term, it's anticipated just to go towards, helping with the utilities and paying for the maintenance staff, yeah, which would be one person. I'll pay for that as well.
Any other questions? Anybody from the audience have a question? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Who'd like to go next? All right, go ahead. Welcome, please state your name for the record.
Thank you. My name is Dana Schmidt, and I'm the library director at the Yankton Community Library. I just wanted to give you a little more information and background about the library and what we're doing with the money we're requesting from you. So the library currently has 1,000 card holders from the county that are outside of city limits. And the charge for cards outside of city limits is $40 per household per year. However, per our agreement with the county, those residents in the county are only paying $5 per household per year. And the idea is the lump sum that the county pays to the library is meant to pay the remaining $35 per household for those cards. However, if you do the math, 1,000 cards at $40 per card would be $40,000 per year. The residents cover $5,000 of that with their $5 payments. And then our request from the county right now is $24,000. So that still leaves us $11,000 short of where we should be for money from those cards. So we are, doing the best we can with what we have. And we're continuing to make the most of every dollar we have and offer as many services and resources that we can to our community. We understand that you're needing to make some difficult decisions and that you're trying to reevaluate the county's priorities. If the county does decide to cut the amount of money that contributes to the library budget, it's going to make it more difficult for us to do what we do. That may mean fewer staff, fewer materials we're able to purchase for our patrons, fewer programs we may be able to put on for the community. And also it'll probably mean an increase in the fees that county residents will need to pay for cards. But no matter what, we'll still be a welcoming place for all. We'll still do our best to offer great customer service and help those that walk through our doors however we can. We'll still support all of Yankton County and the surrounding areas, whether they live inside or outside city limits however we can. We'll always do the best we can with what we have, but a cut to our budget will affect the community. I don't see the library as a non-essential thing. In many ways, I see it as the heart of the community because we are welcoming to everybody no matter what. And I hope you reconsider the cut and rather renew the agreement to continue to support the partnership between the library and the city. Do you have any questions for me about anything about the library?
Any questions from anyone on the commission? No, I'd just like to say we appreciate your efforts. I know my kids go to the library quite often, and it's a great, safe environment, and thank you for all your hard work in doing that for our communities.
Thank you.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
I grew up in Yankton County, and I used the library extensively because back then no computers, no smartphones, and it was very essential doing homework, and I always felt, growing up on a farm, not too wealthy, that money that it cost for the kids, and yet the town kids were free. We always kind of felt like we were discriminated against, We have to drive in for one thing, and then we have to pay money where the kids can walk there from town. So, although my dad said it's worth it, he never got to go to high school, so
Yeah, and I think many people do say it's worth it, the fees that they have to pay, and many have said they'd be willing to pay more. But the reason they don't pay for the cards inside city limits is because we get so much funding from the city. They fund 97% of our budget, and so we're asking 3% from the county because we can't give free cards to the county if we're not getting any income from them. But we have computers for people that are still using them for homework, for looking for jobs, looking for homes and all kinds of things. We have people that come in from out of town and out of state and sometimes out of country that are printing airline tickets or different things. And it's just, I think a lot of people know the library is there for everybody, and we try to continue that and just always be welcoming.
I think with the library, the city gets a lot of the funding from the sales tax, all right? And the people who live in the country, are buying their groceries and their clothes and their feed and things like that from the city and paying into that sales tax. Whereas the county, most of our funding comes solely from property tax. So to say that the people who live in the country aren't contributing. I know it's tough to, this person is from the city, this one's not, but I do think there is a significant contribution from those who don't live in the city still paying into the city budget, and that goes to the streets and the libraries and all of that. But
Right.
I know it's difficult to
I understand that.
Sure.
I just want to say one more thing. When I worked in Chicago for the Department of Defense at Great Lakes Naval Station, I would go to the library. It was free. I could get on the internet. I could look up stuff. I could spend my weekends there because I didn't bring my family along. And the library is such a great place. So you can read newspapers. You can all the current events, and like I said, you have travelers that come through there. It's very essential for people like that. I used it extensively. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sherry, Joe, anything you'd like to add?
I do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Go ahead, Dave. Welcome.
Hi, Dave Mingo from the city of Yankton. Thanks for taking time to hear our discussions. I'm not going to go through everything I went through with you last time. I'm sure you're appreciative of that. I would just say that I'm here representing the center and the airport, as those two facilities are under the guidance of my department. And if you have any questions of me, I'd be happy to hang around and come back up as questions arise during your discussions after the public comments are over. So would appreciate your consideration of funding for the center and the airport at the numbers that we had originally proposed. So I'd be available for questions now or later.
Any questions for Mr. Mingo?
Yankton Airport is a private airport, isn't it?
It's a municipal public airport.
Yeah, okay.
Correct.
But also, there's military aircraft that come in there, isn't it?
There are at times,
That come in
correct.
there.
Yeah.
I know that because last year, I happened to be going to Menards, and this Blackhawk helicopter
yeah.
came in, and of course, me being in military, I drove right over there, and they were from Fort Riley.
Yep.
And that's where I was, one of my stations. And I talked extensively with them, from left to right, the co-pilot, the pilot, the crew chief, and the woman on the end told me she was waiting, she was killing time because in 3 weeks she was going to go to officer candidate school, and then so that airport is essential, not just for private, but for the military too.
It is, and they actually, the Blackhawks that are they in Lincoln? There's some
The
in
Blackhawks
Nebraska.
are stationed in Fort Riley at the airfield there, and it's called Marshall Field.
Okay.
And they have a radius of 300 miles that they can practice in. And the pilot told me that Yankton is 299 from Fort Riley, from Marshall Field. I said, have you been out to the lake? And he said, as soon as we get fueled up, we're headed for the lake to see it. So,
So we love it when they come here because they do take on a lot of fuel, and fuel sales is another thing that helps us a little bit with our funding out there. And they've said the same thing to our airport manager out there, is it's within their radius of that they can reach,
Yeah,
and
300 miles.
Yep, and they love stopping in.
I'd sure hate to see these guys come up there and go, oh gosh, we don't know how you feel for you because the county didn't give us any money.
Well, yeah. We appreciate the participation in the past. I mean, the percentages have evolved over the years, and, you know, we've kind of just fallen on a flat rate at 15,000. But I can talk operating budgets or anything else you want. If you have questions, I know you have all that information and have heard me state it before, so.
What is the total budget for the airport?
So the total operating budget is 340 projected in 2020. And then depending on FAA funding of actual construction projects, that number varies dramatically. For example, next year, I think we have $3.5 million worth of construction projects out there that the FAA funds 90% of, or FAA funds 90% of, and state funds 5%, and the city funds 5% of that. So, you know, the $15,000 that the county flat rate has funded in the past is typically some smaller capital items on site with snow removal equipment and mowing equipment, and you know, it goes into the budget for operations. So, you know, it's much appreciated if you can make it work.
I just got a correction. I said the woman was headed for Officers Canada School. She was headed for West Point.
Oh, wow.
Any other questions for Ms. Domingue? Any questions from the audience? All right. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it. Who'd like to go next?
25,000 a mile.
Welcome, sir.
Good morning. My name is James Cox. I'm the chairman of the airport board here in Yankton. Just like to highlight a couple of things that Dave was talking about. The Yankton Airport has been designated South Dakota's Airport of the Year. We're all looking for positive things to talk about and feel good about and stuff. And if you're a resident of Yankton County, you can feel good about it. And the 15,000 to me is it's a representation of the partnership between the county and the city. And I think we've talked and heard about the city and the county should be trying to develop a lot more of a partnership on a lot of things, because everything affects, if you're a resident of the city of Yankton, you're a resident of Yankton County, and it's damn difficult to separate the two of them. And so I'd appreciate it a lot of us. We'd see some more. I saw in the paper today that their city and county are talking about all the damages that were done in March and stuff. It's too bad we're having to partnership on something like that, but I guess it will continue on, and it'll bear fruit that we do have a super good partnership. So, thank you.
Any questions for?
I just want to say, from one veteran to another Army Vietnam veteran, welcome home.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else care to comment on the budget? Welcome.
Thank you. Nancy Winandy. I am not presenting on Yankton Area Progressive Growth today. I do have time scheduled for your board meeting on Tuesday to do a presentation then. But what I wanted to do is pass along some questions that have been asked of me that I do not know about your city budget. I've encouraged the people who have talked to me about this to reach out to you directly, but in case they haven't done so, I wanted to share some of these questions, so as you're going through the budget today, maybe you can address some of them. The first one was talking about the surplus funds or the reserve funds that you have. And by state law, how much are you allowed to have in reserves?
Is that 5%?
5%.
5%.
So you're allowed to have 5% in
Up to 5%.
up to, okay. And I saw that as one of the line items in the budget, in the cash report that you have, that you put away that 5%. So where does that go? Does that just sit in another account and accrue interest? Are you able to use that reserve? How does that work?
That is set in contingency it's called. And that's for any department that needs is low on their budget, I don't have to advertise, I can just take it out of there and just by a motion by the board.
So
Overages, essentially.
if that doesn't get used during the year, does that then roll over and continue to stay in some
No, it
type?
just goes back to the county,
Okay,
into the general fund, and then next year we'll, you know, have another figure, and that, what I have in there for this year isn't the complete 5%.
okay. And is that money able to be used on roads and bridges then,
No,
or?
it's strictly for budget supplements.
For
It's a
departments?
rainy day fund,
Departments.
basically,
Yeah.
for departments, yeah.
At the end of the year, say like my office, the auditor's office, it will be short, I can transfer money out of this fund to put into my budget.
Okay,
One example that we may run into is with some of our murder trials that are coming up. They may cost in excess of 100. We don't know how much they're gonna cost, and that might be an overrun in that department. And so we would take from the contingency fund. It's hard to know what they're going to be right now, but.
And if they're large amounts that I will have to, because that's what I'll start looking at now is how close we are to the budgets. And if some of it is, I have to supplement more, then I will advertise for budget supplement.
okay,
This basically is just for small amounts, you know, if a department needs, say, 1,000 or 5,000, then I don't have to supplement for that, just a little amount.
and what is the amount, I don't have that in front of me right now, but what is the amount that's set aside, the
This year, it's 300,000.
300,000,
Next
okay.
year, it's 400,000.
Okay, so that contingency is actually a different number than at the bottom of the report. There's a 5% per South Dakota codified law. I thought it was like 500 and some thousand. That was at the bottom of one of the pages.
The last page, that is.
So that was the number that I was referring, not the 300 or 4,000 or 300,000 or $400,000 number. That was the one I didn't know where that 500,000.
Oh, that's like a, I don't know how to quite explain. It's a credit that goes off the general fund. It's like a credit that, I should, next time we meet, I will get the answer for that. That, we don't use any of that.
But where does that money go? Is that sit in reserve somewhere?
That's just in the general fund.
So are you able to access that money the same as you're able to access the other money?
No, I think the next meeting I will get that
Okay.
information to you. But it's almost like a credit to help with the general fund total.
Okay. Yeah, I think some further clarification, because
Yeah.
people are looking at that number in the budget and saying, well, what can that be used for? Why do we have that much money just sitting there if we could maybe utilize that for something?
And it has to do with taxes. And if you look, the general fund has one, the highway, and then the 233, the government buildings. Anything that deals with taxes gets that 5%. But I will clarify.
That 5% kind of credit taken off of it.
Yep.
So it's not like it's
Correct.
added to it, it's
No,
taken
no,
away from it.
a
I just,
credit. Yep.
yeah, so I just didn't know if that was real revenue coming into the county and you're not able to allocate it into a budget, where is it going?
Yep.
And
It's
what
almost
happens
like
to
a
that?
credit. You know, it's not really there, it's just a credit to the total budget for the general fund.
Okay.
And those other funds, highway and.
Okay, well, I look
But
forward
but
to
I'll
learning
send
more
you- yeah,
about that,
I'll
so.
send you a clarification.
Super, and you can just present it at the next meeting too, because
Okay.
I'm sure that the other people who are asking me those questions would
Yeah, you'll
appreciate
be at the next
that. Yeah. And then the other one that is on the budget is like a $30,000 clerk, and I'm not sure what clerk was.
That's attorney, the state, we send so much to the state for, and then we get reimbursed for any court-appointed attorneys that we use.
Okay, so it's just court-appointed attorneys, but that doesn't go under the state's attorney's budget, that's just a separate line item. Okay.
That's
That-
state regulated too, so.
Okay. And then the other question that someone asked me is, and I didn't look it up in the handbook, so I'm just going to ask the question. The classification of commissioners as employees, is there a separate classification? Because you're obviously not classified as a full-time employee, or I wouldn't think you are, maybe you are. or a part-time employee, is there a classification for what commissioners are? And I don't know. So,
It's just on our pay schedule or our pay as just a commissioner. And if there's
Are you
no
talking like
classification-
exempt, non-exempt type, or?
the question was just asked of me, and I said, I don't have any idea. I've never read their entire handbook, and I didn't know kind of what they were getting to as far as what the classification, if it had access to benefits or to other programs within the county, or what they were asking, and so I was just,
The commissioners don't have any benefits.
yeah, so I was just passing the question along to people, so. All right, and if there's any questions that you specifically want me to answer on Tuesday when I'm presenting, you can email me any of those questions so I can work that into my budget presentation for you then, so, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on the budget from the audience? All right, going once, going twice. So bring it back to the board for some discussion. One of the things I guess I see with what we've experienced with some of the damage is we're just looking at ways where we can cut the budget. One of the things we're trying to put money into is our James River bridges. We have 4 of them that are all built in the 1950s, and Stone Church Bridge is, in particular, it's coming to the end of its useful life. We likely have 10 years or less on that bridge, so we're trying to do everything we can to put some funding in so that we can apply for grants. And I think that was the intent, to try to come up with some funds to put in to that one, I guess. Does anybody have any proposals? I did speak with Don before he went into surgery, and something that we talked about is the senior citizen center in particular. I think we need to do what we can to take care of our seniors, so I'm in favor of funding that at the full amount, at least for this year. We can.
I am. I guess one question for Dave. Do you know, is there any possibility of grants out there for capital improvements, or does it get muddy? Because the city actually owns the property, correct?
Correct.
So is that maybe muddies the water? If it was owned by a nonprofit or by the senior center, maybe there's grants, but I'm just curious if there's any possibility.
So we explore every possible option, and we've discussed actually ownership conversions or transfers at different times. From the membership's perspective, what we've heard is they're going to end up, and the reality is, if the city and the county, aren't involved in the ownership of it, if one of us isn't, they're going to end up short in the long run as far as ongoing operations and maintenance issues are concerned. They might have a couple of smaller opportunities for grants, but usually if they do additions or things like that, those types of grants, the bigger grants, have to be sponsored by a governmental entity anyway, so we're in a better position if the city or the county owns the property for the bigger picture, larger dollar items. So,
Sure.
But yeah, we're constantly looking for any state or federal sources for operations. I know Christie does a really good job of accessing any grant programs that are available also. And
I guess I'm talking more specific to like the air conditioner, or to improve, capital improvements to the building, or whatever might come along. Because I know if I look back at some of the past budgets, and it looks like operational is probably hovers around that 60,000 that we split, and then every once in a while there's a spike, 45,000, 42,000, and I assume that's for.
Yeah, it's when some big ticket item comes in, like 2020 with the air conditioner.
Yeah.
The good news on the air conditioner is we've been charting the room temperatures out there, and our deficient unit that we have running is still keeping up barely, so we're getting as much as we can out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long, I guess, and I think the center's an important thing in the community. I want to just make sure we got covered all avenues, and And I don't know if community fundraiser to supplement that would be worth the efforts too, or something to look at, but,
They do a rummage sale, do they not?
They do a number, they do, you know, they do the rock off or whatever it's called, the rocking
Yeah.
chair fundraiser, they do rummage sales, they do many, many fundraisers, so.
Yeah.
Pancakes,
yeah, the
feed and all that.
pancakes. We had the gala,
Yeah.
spent too much money at the gala the other.
If you'd have spent a little bit more, we could have taken,
We could do this $30,000 air conditioner.
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Thanks, Dave.
Did you have anything you wanted to say, Dave, about the center? I mean,
My name is David Hosmer. I'm the president of the board for the center. The only observation I'd make is that I hope that we can talk as it relates to long terms for the center, because one of the things that I've done or thought about on the board is we have our short-term goals, which are annual budgets and so forth, and performance and so forth, and trying to meet those annual goals for trying to help as many people as possible. But we are talking long-term, and one of our long-term goals, believe it or not, is to expand the building. And since I know we have a kind of a partnership between the center and the city and the county and so forth, and the public, let's face it, this is a public facility, we're going to try and put together some plans. And so some of our funds eventually are going to go toward the expansion of a building. And why is that? We're full all the time. Our computer room's full, our tapestry room is full, our game room is full, our exercise rooms are full. We're sitting in the main room for cards, our TV room's full, everything is full, and I think we could use the space. Obviously, we're not going to do that unless we have full buy-in from everybody. So in the future, if you don't mind, I'd sure like to come back and kind of fill you in with what we have. My guess is we're not even talking 3, 4, 5 years. I'm thinking 5 to 10 years. So that'll give everybody plenty of time to try and think about it. But we have nothing in print or anything like that. But good long-term planning serves a lot of goals. So my only observation. Thank you very much.
thank you. Any questions for Mr. Hosmer? Yeah, I really think we need to fund the center at the full amount would be my recommendation for this year. The airport, we're at 7,500. I think we could go up to like 10,000 on that. Then the community library, we're at 12,000. Go up to 15, if that would work.
So, what was that again? Sorry.
I had to get my red pen out in just a minute.
Yeah, got that. We were considering funding the senior center at 33. I think we should fund that at the full amount. The airport.
Which is?
Which was $48,489. Is that correct?
It's down to $47,739 as we speak.
Okay.
It's a little bit of a move.
Do I,
Did you get that, Patty?
$47,739.
do I hear 46? I'm just kidding. Up to, yeah. Yeah.
47,739.
Okay.
You had 15 for the library, Dan?
Yeah, we were at 12. I'd be willing to go up to 15. I know that's not the full amount, but it is a very important service. And per the discussions I've had with Mr. Kettering, he'd be okay with that. And then as far as our county budget as well, we have the county accumulations for the ambulance and emergency management. I want to cut both of those, the ambulance of 56,000, I want to cut that to zero and emergency management.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, go ahead.
do you mind if we,
We need a clarification.
okay.
Are you going back to the other first?
Well, I was
Go-
gonna,
yeah,
let's,
Go ahead.
Let's go back to the other first
Okay.
before we get into that.
Okay, go ahead, Joe.
I just was gonna say, yeah, if we can just kind of go through what.
Those ones?
Those for,
Okay.
kind of before we get too
Okay.
far.
That's just a
down.
proposal. Somebody have something different they'd like to say?
So with that, I'm just going to kind of run through here. Right now at airport, proposing 10,000. And on the next page, where homeless shelter is 10,000, contact center is 50,000. The domestic abuse is 10,000 on that same page. And then when we go to the next following page, the public library, 15,000 is what was stated. Historic sites right now is at 15. And then senior citizens was 47,739. Missouri River sedimentation at the bottom of that page is 1,000. And then the very last page, we have YAPG at 50,000. Are we moving that one to the 25?
Well, per your discussion, was
With,
that?
with the understanding that at the end of 2020, we would see
Reevaluate
what is
funding.
available and then
Yeah.
decide whether to fulfill that commitment 100% in 2020.
I'm fine with that if that's what you've worked out. I guess I never did talk about the Historical Society. What were they at, 24,000, and
That's what they are for 2019.
and we have them at 15?
Yes.
We split the difference this year, 17.5? Or would that,
I'll say it just in general with all things that we're proposing cuts. Wherever we end up, I think we need to do our diligence over this next year and work with each organization, the city, and really look at kind of long-term and short-term and where we're at on everything. And some of it's probably gonna come off of, you know, what our road task force comes up with, where some of this FEMA money comes in, when it comes in, you know, timing of that.
if it comes in?
If it comes in. I don't know when the right time, I just, real quick, and I probably missed something, but in our poor relief community expenditures bucket, we currently are at just over $1 million.
When did you read all those off?
So, and that entails juvenile detention, $85,000. These are all statutorily mandated that, you know, we have no control over this. But here, juvenile detention, $85,000. We have $475,000 for court services this next year, and we don't really know where that's going to end up. Care of poor, $125,400. WIC office, $23,000. Mentally ill, $100,000. Mental health center, $106,000. And the mental illness board of $88,000. So in total, we have just over $1 million budgeted for that. That does not include, you know, ambulance services, county nurse, things of that nature. And you went through this last time, or one of the times, but kind of the category that we're discussing right now as far as discretionary funding, call it. We have Boys and Girls Club, Yankton Transit, YAPG, Library, Airport Pathways, Contact Center, the Historical Society, the Center, and a Domestic Abuse Fund. I think that's all of it.
MSAC, we donate to them too.
Yeah.
$1,000.
So we were at like 266,000 at one time. I have 263 in front of me, but you know, just shows where we're at and that, you know, where our funding is going. And the big point is this top category that we have no control over continues to grow. And
You know, and the pay, and the poor relief and the attorneys and, you know, you never know how much you're gonna spend.
Right.
Yeah,
You don't know how many, we could get a big, hospital
yeah.
claim,
We,
Right.
yeah.
you know,
And-
and then when, I think it's, in the last couple of years, it hasn't been so, I think it's been pretty low on the claims, but you just don't, you don't know.
When June and July, we had, was it $60,000 in court fees in
Right.
in just 2 months that we're obligated to pay? And I think it's a, you know, a bigger discussion on the role of county government is if we could help every organization, I think we would. But there are things that we have to do. We have to maintain our roads and have to maintain our bridges, to me, as a priority, because if we don't, you know, Stone Church in particular, if we don't take care of that bridge, nobody else is going to do it.
Well, and the other thing, if we still had, a year from now, if we had 250 miles of good paved road that all we had to do was maintain, we should, by rights, be spending almost $800,000 a year just in chip sealing, and that would be doing every mile every 7 years. So that's almost a quarter of our highway budget just in chip sealing.
And then you're supposed to crack seal them the
And
next year.
you're supposed to crack seal it. And you're
So-
supposed to-
Did you add that in, Joe?
You know,
Add
so.
another 5,000 a mile.
Yeah.
So, just kind of back to wherever we end up here, I'd like to spend this next year to really understand and dig in and get a long-term goal for where we're going to be. And again, part of that is gonna be driven by what the road task force is, but, you know, bottom line is we have failed, as a county for the last 40 years in our road maintenance, and we need to get back to that.
I'm wondering if we wouldn't be better off in long-term where we don't promise, you know, we look at the budget first, and then toward the end of the year, we set aside X number of dollars, whatever that is, and then we can allocate it to where the need is in each year. I guess having money set aside for each one of these in a year, this is the year too, with the damage that we had and all the resources we spent and all the gravel we've spent. We didn't budget for. Nobody knew this was going to be the worst disaster to hit Yankton County, and you know, we have an obligation to be fixing some of these things. We have to fix some of these things.
One thing I did like in the newspaper, and I saved it, was the explanation of how the United Way divvies out funds and the paperwork that they expect people to submit, and with their goals, their budgets, how much money comes from donors and grants and things like that. And I think that is a very, I don't want to say a neutral process, but it's methodical process, and we don't do that. And to some degree, I think we funded it in the past, so we're going to fund it today, and maybe that's the wrong approach to do. So I did really appreciate that article that explained how the United Way went through and heard the requests and awarded according to the merits of the case to some degree. So I think moving toward that is essential. So next year, budget time, everyone is clear of the expectation that we don't want to see just a number request. We want to see some documentation behind it.
Okay.
So back to
Got
the,
anything, Gary, or?
I just got something I want to say after we're finished. Are you guys all finished?
I think we're still discussing what we wanted to do.
Yeah, I'm finished, other than everyone we gotta get an agreement on where we're at on these and move, and then.
What I think we were discussing for historic preservation, I think, you know, that is important. It was at 24, right? And ours was 15.
Yes.
So where does the board want to go with that one?
I would propose 16.
How about 18?
Fine.
18?
Did you get that written down?
18 work for historical? That's,
As much as you can give them.
yeah, wish we could give them more, to tell you the truth, but.
Okay, we have a proposed change of center 47,739, airport 10,000, library 15, YAPG 25, historical 18. Is that all the changes? And then the county accumulations, ambulance and emergency management goals, or you want that done? And you still want 250 for the James River?
Yeah, I think
we need to talk about those.
the James River bridges, or which one?
Just that whole line item.
Which one are you on?
Are you good? The very second to last page, capital outlay. Okay.
What did you want to discuss on that one?
Well, I did have a question. We've got 326 out of the general fund, and I believe that would be 250 for James River, 56 for ambulance, and then I think there's a 20,000 in there for emergency management, but then when you go over to the emergency management fund, there's another 20,000 listed there. So
It's coming out of the general fund.
Okay,
So that's in the general fund.
It's
and
not
that-
double dipping.
No.
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
The ambulance and the bridge, for the bridges, is in the general fund. Emergency management has a fund all by themselves. So that's where the 20,000 is.
Okay,
And that's if you look on there, it'll be a minus for the county accumulations up there. See, that's the 326 is the 250 in the ambulance.
Okay.
I missed the minus somewhere here.
Well, it won't say minus, but that's what it
Sure.
is. It comes,
Okay.
that's
Alrighty.
that's like just an addition to the budget, these
Okay.
amounts are.
Alrighty. So Dan, you wanted to remove the 20 and the 56?
I think I would like to cut both of them and put them in the James River Bridge Fund. I know, talking to Paul and Steve, that this money in the past has been put there so that when they need a vehicle replacement, the funding is already there. With, I think, as tight as the budget is, I think we need to be talking with the department heads, and if some vehicle needs to be replaced, it needs to be planned on ahead of time and then budgeted for. It's a lot easier to replace something that maybe isn't needed quite so bad if the money is already there, as opposed to planning for it for several years. It's a tough choice, but
Do you know, or do you have in front of you, Patty, where their balance is at?
That's what I was looking for. I thought I had one, but I
I
don't
might
have one
have
in
it
here.
somewhere in this mess.
For county accumulations, you mean?
Well, does
But-
that all go into just one fund, or is there subcategories? Does ambulance
just-
have their own,
It's just county accumulation, and it's just that it's not in their budget. I mean, it doesn't show in their budget, but
right.
it
But in that
shows it
county-
more in the general fund.
In that county accumulations, do you know what percentage of that fund is allocated towards search
Well-
and rescue, or?
They both have had money in it and accumulated, but they've used it.
So it's zero balance right now.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Let me go and run.
I don't know what the board thinks about that. I guess if the department has a major purchase, excuse me, such as an ambulance or something like that, that should be planned on, you know, probably a year ahead of time for replacement. That's, from what I understand, has been a recent change, fairly recent, is this accounting accumulation. It was so much put in each year, and then the money was there to replace an ambulance or a truck. But I would almost rather see that and then budget for it as they come. But I'm open to suggestions from.
And I'm quite the opposite. I guess I like to plan ahead and put a little money away, and, you know, it kind of goes back to what we're trying to do with James River bridges. All these years, we've never put money away, and then we have this huge bill. Well, if we don't put a little money away and then we have to buy an ambulance, which is fairly pricey. Jerry, do you know how much the last one was? Was it 100 or 200? Am I putting you on the spot?
I'm thinking it was like,
I didn't think it was that much because all they're buying is chassis.
well, I
They're
think the
pulling
last
box off.
time they bought
Yeah.
the whole rig, and then the next time they'll end up just buying a new chassis and transfer
Yeah.
the box.
Right.
But I wanna say, yeah, you're looking at 100,000 just for
Yeah,
The top
frame.
200 for the total, probably,
Yeah.
roughly,
I-
maybe.
yeah.
You know, and so the plan is, if we need to turn one over every 4 years or 5 years, you take the number, divide it by the years, that's
Sure.
what you put away, and then the pain of buying it is less. So I am certainly not for moving the ambulance to zero. Now, if we want to cut it back a little bit, I could be okay with that, but again, you get back to exactly what we're trying to fight on the James River bridges.
Sure.
Nobody painfully put the money away, and it's, I look at my personal budget, I've got 2 kids going to college here pretty soon, and, you know, and it's no different than buying a car and such, so I guess that's my opinion. Now, whether we need 20,000 for a new truck in the emergency management, I'm not the point person there, so I don't know what the fleet is or the age of the fleet and such.
I believe
but-
was it for the replacement of that truck that we looked at last meeting? I think that's what that's going toward.
Yep, and
Was
we,
it for that, or I think that's just his annual, his normal budget, just to.
I think we know it.
I'm not 100% sure.
yep, so I think we really need to look at the plan there. It's no different than highway. We have a huge
Sure.
amount of stuff on the highway. The list of assets that we have, and working with Mike to get an estimate for when we need capital improvements out there. So I hesitate to move the ambulance to zero.
I'm probably lean closer to you. I'd like planning, so then one year you don't have a huge hit and you gotta pull it from somewhere, but I think, I don't know, maybe compromises, we reduce what we're putting away, maybe we try to stretch things a little bit.
It's a lot easier to, you know, if you have the money already there to spend it, you know, then come in front of us and say, you know, I really need this ambulance. There's no way it can go another year.
What if we
or
have
another
half
2
the
years?
money sitting there and then we gotta come?
Well, even that's easier. I would be okay with, could we bump it to 25? That's half the money, and then if it needs to be replaced, half of it should be there.
We have, what, 56 to ambulance and 20 to emergency
Could
management?
knock them both in half, well, like 25 for ambulance and 10 for emergency management. Then at least some money is stuck away. It's not the full amount.
I think the lowest I would want to go on the ambulance is 40. If we have to buy a brand new one at 200,000 and we're going to stretch it to 5 years, it's 40,000 a year. So I think 40 would be reasonable. It cuts 16 off, but I would hesitate to move it to the James River Bridge Fund. I think that should stay at 250. The reason I say that is because we have a dire need to invest in all of our roads today. And I got a call on this from a taxpayer, and he said, you know, I was at the meeting where if you don't spend $1 today on a road, it's going to cost you $6 or $7 tomorrow, because you didn't invest in that road today. So I think we need to, yes, address James River bridges, but we can't go 100% all in. And that's our only focus, and we let everything else just kind of survive. So we need to be prudent, put a little away here, and in 4 years, we'll have our $1 million, which is, for me, the goal is to get $1 million in that fund. But all of the other things we're saving need to go into the chip sealing that we're talking about at these township meetings, or picking a road where we actually do put a 2-inch overlay on a road, possibly talking about a very specific tax opt-out, very short term for one project, and it goes away. So having that conversation with the public is they have to, you know, and we don't just talk about roads there, we talked about the ambulance service. That is a cost to our county.
It's a huge
unique
cost.
cost to our county. We do a very good job of providing that, but we talked about the Boys and Girls Club donations, and we talked about all these other things in the budget and the need for juvenile detention and all of that. And I think folks have a better understanding and appreciation for a good balance of services. And we certainly brought up the us versus them, which some folks like to bring that up at every meeting. The city gets this and the country gets this, and at the end of that Mayfield meeting, I think everybody walked out with the idea that this is our county and we need to look at it as a whole. And there's my soapbox speech, if you will, but I feel strongly we cannot move ambulance to zero. And again, if you want to reduce it, 40s as low as I would go. As far as emergency management, has anybody worked with Paul to understand his need for the 20,000?
I just want to
Not in
interject
depth,
something
I
here.
have not, no.
No, go ahead.
On the last commission meeting, Mr. Scherschlick and somebody else brought this, I think it's a 3-ton diesel truck that FEMA gave to the county. They gave it to the county. Now, it's 10 years old, I guess, about, and they want to get money to trade it off. So I looked at it and I thought, it kind of looks like a fire truck kept inside, heated garage, all washed up, clean. I said, gee, Mr. Scherschlick, how many miles are on that? And he said, I don't know. I said, what do you mean you don't know? So he jumped up in the cab and he looked at the odometer and says, 5,900 miles. I said, what? 59,000? No, 5,900. My response was a diesel engine, a TD 466, doesn't break in until it's got 30,000 miles on it. I said, you're running your ambulances 200,000 miles with patients that have to get to a hospital, and you want to replace a truck that the government gave to you with 5,900 miles on it? And I walked away. But that isn't all. I got one more thing I want to say after you're finished.
To what you said, Sherry, I understand where you're coming from, but I think what the dire need to fix a bridge is we have to draw a line in the sand and say we are gonna do this or we're not gonna do that. You know, just up to a year ago, we had $1 million in the James River Bridge Fund, and that got spent on West City Limits Road. And now we have bridges that are in very, very bad shape. And so we can't depend on it being replaced 4 years from now. None of us maybe will be here. And the priority may be to do something different. So from my point of view, when we went and talked about Stone Church Bridge, every one of us said that was gonna be a priority, and we all voted on it. And I think we need to stand by that commitment, and we need to make it a goal. And I'm not saying let other things lapse, but it has to be a priority because it hasn't been a priority in the last 70 years. And when that bridge of Stone Church, when it's closed down, it's not if, but when, if the money isn't there, that'll never open again. So that's why I think it has to be a priority. It has to be at the top, and we need to not have tunnel vision, but put the funds in there, get our 20% for the bridge improvement grant. Once that's there, then we can go and catch up on some areas. But we have to make it a priority or it's not gonna happen.
And, you know, I think you're right, but the way I look at it is if we're commit to our $250,000 a year for 4 years, we're applying for that grant this year. We won't spend that $1 million for 4 years, even if we got the grant today. So I think we're on, if we had $1 million sitting there next year, we wouldn't spend it because the length of the process to get the design, the preliminary engineering work, then the design work, and then the construction, we're 4 years out. So I think we're on schedule. And, you know, going forward, I think we continue that, you know, inflation depends on what happens, but we continue that $250,000 within reason and being safe. I don't want to replace a bridge unless it is on its last leg to an extent. You know, if we
It
look,
is.
and that Stone Church Bridge certainly is, but like Jamesville Bridge, if you look at the ratings and the engineering reports on that, you know, I don't want to, if a bridge has 20 years left in it, I don't want to replace it in 10.
No,
And
I don't
you know, and
think we need to.
I'm more with Sherry. I think every penny we possibly can scrape up needs to go into our roads and infrastructure. And bridges are part of that, but I just think we're already on schedule. You know, if we had $1 million saved in 2 years, we still wouldn't be able to spend it because of the time it takes to get to replacement. So I think we're on track myself. And, you know, I wouldn't put more into that fund at this time. I know it's important that we don't lose sight of that and that we make sure that this gets followed through. But I would put, rather than increasing that fund, I would keep it in maintenance of roads. You know, we have a lot of roads that might not be main corridors or might not get a lot of use, but they're in good shape, and I think we need to consider those assets to the county, and we need to protect those, and we need to start making sure that they are maintained. Whether they get 2 cars or 10 cars or 1,000 cars a day, if they're in good shape, we need to protect them.
Would agree.
I guess I just want to say the one thing, you want to get everything you can out of the bridge. That's good. I like to get everything I can out of my vehicles. I was up to Minneapolis a month after the bridge collapsed up there. And I believe, don't quote me, but I believe that bridge was a lot newer than any of the ones we have in Yankton County. And people were killed in that bridge. So.
Well, in the engineering reports, I mean, there's safety factors in there. You know, when they say 20 years left, they don't mean it's going to fall in 20. They mean it's probably going to fall in 50, if it's going to fall. But
What's rated at 11 tons, I went on an airplane ride on Stone Church, and we actually went and flew all those bridges, and we got up to Stone Church Bridge, and guess what I saw? A semi full of hay going across that bridge, and I guarantee you that was more than 11 tons. So it's safe as long as those load limits are being obeyed, which
Right.
is not the case because I saw it with my own eyes. So we have no idea what the erosion, what the flooding has done. When there was flooding up there, I saw a chunk of ice 50 feet long, 3 foot thick, come at that bridge, stay there for a while, and then break up and go through. We have no idea what the damage has been to that. We have no idea what the damage to Fleegs has been, which has a long history of erosion. We could have $500,000 worth of damage to those bridges, and we don't even know about. So
that may
I'm
be.
just, I agree with what was said. Well, let's do a compromise. How about 35,000 for the ambulance and 10,000 for emergency management? Would we want to do that?
No. I stand firm 45,000 for ambulance. If you want to move the emergency management one to 0, I'm good with that. But I feel strongly, we are the only ambulance provider in this county. And that is a safety measure that we have taken on. We are not required to do it, but it is our duty to plan well for that department.
And as of right now, all those ambulances are in good shape, so if next year they need one or something happens, there's nothing saying we can't increase that number.
But the thing is then, if there's nothing put away today, and next year one of those ambulances craps out and we have to spend $200,000, we have to put that in the budget. Where is it coming from? What are we cutting then? So by putting a little money away today, we do not have to do a drastic cut somewhere else. If anybody can tell me where the $200,000 will be cut from next year, I'll listen. But that's the advantage of putting money away. It's no different than the discussion about putting money away for the James River bridges. The pain of doing it, should something collapse, we have some money put away to address it, versus we have to find the money or borrow the money. And that is another option. We can always borrow money. And right now, money's pretty cheap to borrow, but I don't believe borrowing money should be your financial plan. So, and I'm willing to stretch an ambulance from the normal 4 years or whatever to 5, maybe 6, but we still have to plan for that purchase.
I believe they're on a 4-year replacement schedule, and that 56,000 at 4 years is 225,000, 224. So if we were to stretch it to a 5-year, that'd put us at 45,000. If we went to a 6-year, that puts us at 37,000.
So I'll restate, I am good with going to 40, because if we're $20,000 short, it's a lot easier to find $20,000 than $226,000 or whatever that was.
I'd support 40 this year, and then let's, again,
All right,
do
well-
our diligent research this year, work with, let's,
Okay, well, let's vote on it then, I guess, if you want to, for,
These are just proposed changes. You'll approve it on September 3rd with the changes, because we'll talk about it again on the August 20th meeting.
so 40 for the ambulance and then 10 for emergency. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Gary, what do you think?
I don't know, you guys are hashing it out there, I'll let you figure it out.
All right, I can live with that.
Okay, so we have 40 ambulance, emergency management 10,
Yep.
and 250 still to the
Yes.
bridges.
Is there anything else that we
So
needed to
a
discuss?
couple other notes I just want to make sure the public's aware is we did the 2.4% across the board for employee pay raises. The commissioners took 0. We chose not to give ourselves a pay increase for next year. It's not a huge savings to the county, but I think it does show a genuine concern for our situation. On the government building fund, we had been putting $60,000 away for that. The fund is fairly healthy, and we moved that to $20,000, so there's a $40,000 reduction there that we did make.
is that out of that safety center? Is that what you're talking about, or is that just?
No, that's our
General government
buildings.
Yeah,
buildings, so
yeah.
if we're doing roofs
Yeah.
and leaky windows and air
Yep.
conditioners and things like that.
Which we do, and we do have some of the smaller buildings in Irene and Lesterville that are,
Right.
we're gonna just have to live with them as they are now. They need attention, but we just can't afford it as of right now.
And then we do have our debt service, which expires last payment in 2025. So that will actually come off our tax roll. And that is something we've been discussing at the road task force meetings as well. So I think that's the only notes I had to make sure we mentioned.
Something to keep in mind is the safety center fund. We ratcheted that back. They had pretty healthy, I think they were almost at $1 million. And then there's the
yes.
remodel with the, well, it's not technically, but the women's
The women's portion.
I forget the numbers. I want to say it was a $400,000 estimate, and that is up to like 6.
I think it's 7.
It was closer to
6 or
7, it's
now.
713
So-
or something.
I'm okay with, still putting in the 10%. I think we went
25%.
back.
Well, we
We're-
had
Right now,
Yeah.
and then you guys talked about putting only 10%.
Yeah.
10%.
So I'm still okay with that, but just keep in mind that that fund is not what we thought it was.
See, and I'll be supplementing that, because, we have the cash, but we don't have budget.
Sure.
So I'll be advertising,
Yep.
supplement
did
that
you-
700,000.
Did you want to move that to 10, or do you want to keep it at,
No, I want to move it to 10 still, but it's,
okay. Should we put it at 15 for a little while and move it later? You want to go
No.
to 10?
You know, Jim was good with 10.
Okay,
That's quite a bit of money.
let's
10%.
do that.
Yeah.
yep.
That's an
And-
example of how, when you work with the jail, everything there is very expensive, so.
So, and just to kind of tee up what Sherry just said too, is I hope we're finding some middle ground with where our dollars are allocated and still making some
Yeah.
cuts where needed and there's gonna be talk of opt-outs coming down the road.
About what?
About opt-outs coming down the road for our roads funds, and I feel comfortable that we have done what we can to at least a good faith effort, that we're being responsible with the budget and hopefully we have some success if necessary for that.
Gary, did you have anything?
Are we all finished?
I just want to make, then I'll make these changes and have them, because on the agenda for the 20th to talk about the budget, and I'll have it then. And then you can look it over and see if you want any more changes, and then we can approve it on September 3rd.
Okay.
The center is 47,739, airport 10, library 15, YAPG 25, historical 18, ambulance county accumulations 40,000, emergency management 10, and 250,000 for the James River bridges. On that, there'll be a resolution for the ambulance and for those
Okay.
county accumulations. Do you want all those amounts 4 years?
Sorry, say that again?
Do you want them all accumulated, this amount of money for 4 years? Or just the James River bridges? Because I can put that in the resolution to accumulate this amount of money for 4 years.
No, I don't think I'd do the 4 years. I think that if we get
Just-
another
just-
disaster,
Just keep it for 2020.
yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
year by year.
1
would
year, I
say.
think that's wise.
Yep.
Gary, was your comment about the budget? I'm gonna, or if it's about something else?
Yeah, it's just kind of a closing.
Here, does anybody, before we finish talking about the budget, anybody have anything they'd like to say or address us about it? I know we weren't able to fund everything like we wanted to, but I think at least I feel like it was a good compromise, so going once, going twice. All right, Gary, you had something?
Well, I just want to thank everyone that came here in support of the library, the airport, and the senior citizens, Jim Cox and Dave Hosmer and everyone else. I got a lot of empathy for Don. He's having heart surgery today. I had it a few months ago, and he's going to be out of commission for a while, just like I was. So that makes me the oldest guy on the commission. Yankton County residents' average income is about $40,000. That includes all the doctors, lawyers, the white collar, blue collar, janitors, income for Yankton County. And being I grew up in this county, I know it pretty well. I'm saddened that the library and the airport and the senior citizens center even came up on the chopping block. They never should have been put up on the chopping block at all. Being the oldest commissioner here today, the rest of you people are going to get old someday. Now, if you're rich, you don't need any money. If you're poor, medium income, you need to use these facilities. Kids need to use the libraries in the country. And again, like I said, this should have never come up on a chopping block, these three, the library, the airport, and the senior citizen. And then just one more thing I'd like to close with. It's a quote from President Teddy Roosevelt. He quotes, and I'll quote it as good as I can. He said, "Complaining about a problem and not having a solution is only whining." Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Next item on the agenda, public comment. Anybody here for public comment? There's none. All right, go on. Anybody care to make a public comment? Now would be the time to do so. Going once, going twice. All right, I'll go ahead and close public comment. Next public meeting will be Tuesday, the 20th. Another administrative thing, Joe and I are going to be out at Mission Hill for Town Hall meeting on Monday at 6:30 at Vaughan Lutheran Church. We're going to meet with the Mission Hill Township Board. Sherry will have a Lesterville Road
meeting.
Task Force probably by yourself. I
Yep,
assume.
7 PM with
7
the
p.m.
other 5 members will be there.
Other 5 members, and so you guys are welcome to come out and give us any thoughts that you'd have. We'll be having 2 of them, again, one at Mission Hill, Vaughan Lutheran Church starting at 6:30, and then the fire hall at 7 o'clock, and that's on Monday, the 19th.
And I did forget, I will put this in for Rob, secretary. I'll put that in there too.
Okay. Alrighty. All right, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everybody, for attending.